Welcome to Change and Triumph with Tené Williams and Dr. Mitchell Levy. I'm so absolutely honored to have you as a guest. And this is like about 2 years in counting
This
since
is one of my longest sort of delays between start and get on the air. Yes, indeed. But it's a
I
different me.
know
It's a good thing.
it is a good thing. So before we talk about the 20 companies, the fund, or executive abundance, I want to go back. Where did your story really begin, Mitchell?
When I think about how I show up in the world now with a foundation of credibility, I start thinking about what is credibility, and one of the key values associated with it is integrity. And so if I'm thinking about integrity, it goes back to when I was 9, my parents got divorced. And my dad would come in once a month or once every other month, the helicopter dad, and take his 3 kids to a movie that was way older than we should have gone to. And, and do the bowling and all that other stuff. And then he'd leave. And the question I asked myself at that stage is this what a dad should be? Right. And so it's sort of a integrity thing, but I'll put that aside because I remember asking that, but the rest of my youth was kind of blurry. What happened next, I'll fast forward to B school.
Okay.
When I was in business school, I ended up doing some work for a professor who ended up being my first male mentor. And I did enough work that I proved his theories to be correct. He used that work to get a job. I was going to the College of William and Mary, and he got a job at Colonial Mutual Fund in Boston. Essentially, he said, why don't you come with me? And so I said yes. And the downside of that is he was hedonistic and narcissistic. And I didn't really know that. I guess I did, but I didn't see it. And what I could say now in retrospect is although I only stayed with him for a year, he stayed with me for 37. And there were
Okay.
all these really yucky lessons that I was taught in life that I had to unlearn and do differently. And many of them dealt with the types of things that are part of being a good, credible human.
I understand. You grew up in New York and New Jersey. So I was just telling someone yesterday that the New York that I came from, the 80s and 90s, it was really aggressive. It was definitely cutthroat. And what you're saying about your mentor is something I've said for years as well about my first mentor, guy I worked for from 18 to about 23. And he taught me how to absolutely be ruthless in sales. And I could sell snow to an Eskimo. One of the things of the old office, I'm talking mid-90s, we were supposed to get a deposit for this thing. And so it was like, if I shake you upside down, are you saying nothing will fall out? I would even walk people to the ATM machine.
I have
So,
to tell you, there were things that were taught by our first set of mentors that you look back in retrospect and said, wait, I really thought that way. I really did those things. Yeah. And the answer is yes. I think what happens is a lot of when I see what people's superpower is today, and because
right.
part of what I do is I help people focus on clarity. A lot of times you need to go back to where their kryptonite was born
Mm,
because when somebody overcomes their kryptonite, they then want to do that for other people as well, and it becomes their superpower.
right. That makes sense. I know you say you have this rare ability to look at chaos, live in it, and build a framework around it because of all of that chaos that you went through with your dad and early mentor. When did you first realize you could do that?
Mm. I don't know if it's rare. I just know that I can do it,
Okay.
right? So it's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that, so I don't really know. What I can
Mhm.
tell you, growing up, high school, bad grades, sort of was cloudy, like my entire high school. And then I got to college, and all of a sudden, just things hit. They just aligned. I went to my first semester and I ended up getting all A's and two B's in my first semester of
Mm,
college. I'm like,
nice.
this was for a BCD student. This is not
Mm,
a, this was like crazy. So I went to my guidance counselor. I said, I was in a program, International Finance and Marketing. And I go, this is really easy, right? Because
right.
like life was never easy before. What would be the hardest thing I could do in the business school? And there
Hmm.
turns out there was a joint program with the business school and the industrial engineering school. And it
Okay.
was called a Bachelor of Science in Stochastic and Deterministic Models of Operational Research,
Okay.
which essentially is how do you take people and systems and model them and improve them? And
Hmm.
so I must have had this before, but not recognized it. But I actually went to school as an undergrad to actually model things and to improve them.
Okay.
And and it turns out for some people, now this is relatively rare. The people who actually use what they studied in their undergrad for the rest of their lives, I'm one of those weird people. And so it turns out a lot of the tools that I was taught in my undergrad, I still use today. And it was,
Amazing.
yeah. And so it was just so when did I recognize it? I don't know. It might have been 20 years later.
Hmm.
And or one of the cool parts is in 2019, I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility between 2019 and 2020. And
Amazing.
when I first started doing this, I didn't really know what I was going to measure. And so I did my first 10 interviews. But I just knew because I've been using the tools from my undergrad, how to do surveys, both qualitative, quantitative, how to pull data together.
Hey,
I just
Mitchell, are you
figured it
still
would
there?
come. Oh yeah, it slowed down for a little bit.
It slowed down. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of, so you, what the last thing I heard you say is, so what I started doing is,
Oh yeah. So what happened is I knew because I was taught how to do surveys, qualitative and quantitative surveys. I ended up starting the interviews. And I did my first 10 interviews. And what happened, and this is sort of in the answer of your question, when did you know? This is when I really knew, but this is recent in life. And what happened is when people would come in, so I made a pact with my team. We're going to interview 500 people. Trust me, when I said, we're not going to hire anyone new, we're going to do 500 people in the next year, there was like panic. I said, no, I'll walk you through
wow,
it. We'll make this happen. And
wow.
what was fascinating is of the first 10 people, there were a handful that came late. I think there might have been one no-show. There were at
Okay.
least 3 or 4 that were absolutely unprepared. And at first, it's possible that my old male mentor sort of crept back in for a moment because I was like, "Well, listen, I'm spending all this money." I ended up spending 50,000 to the service. I'm spending all this money. You should at least come prepared. And then all of a sudden I realized, "Oh my God, isn't that what I'm analyzing?"
Ah,
So
right.
so so all of a sudden it wasn't about me, right? Which is what maybe you or my male mentors told us. It wasn't about me. It
Right.
was about seeing how people showed up. So how can I make sure when they show up, they're ready? How can I
Mhm.
determine? So we'd go into the green room, we'd spend 10, 15 minutes and I say, hey, let's run through your questions. I asked 5 questions. I wanted them to respond in 5 or 10 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, if they weren't quite there, I would say something really interesting. I go, I'd love to do the interview with you, but because we also go live, I don't think it's going to present you the best way possible.
Huh.
Would you be interested in us working with you on the stuff you're working on for the next 15 minutes and we'll reschedule? So then I also
Okay.
kept track of how many people we scheduled, right? And
Huh.
and what was fascinating is understanding. So the answer to the question, it was chaos for that when I started, and it was actually so much chaos, I wasn't even sure what the end results would be. What I could
Wow.
tell you is 2 gifts came out of that.
Hmm.
One was what are the 10 values of credibility? But the second gift was I was downloaded a very simple formula for articulating clarity. And
Got
so
it.
that's an example that I remember it. I mean, just really remembering it happened, but I think going back to probably one of my first jobs in Silicon Valley at Sun Microsystems.
Yes.
That's what my job was to actually go in, see a problem, fix it, and then roll out a transformational solution to the audience.
And that's back in mid 90s in 97, right? When you started
That
work.
was
So
when
you,
97 is when I was left. I was at Sun Microsystems between 88 and 97. So 9 years.
wow. So you're
Um,
very early in technology.
I had an email address before people knew what that was.
Yes.
I technically had a domain before that. In 1996, before drop shipping made sense, I had a bronze statue store. As a matter of fact, if you see behind me, there's a Remington on the desk.
Okay.
It's because I had a foundry, not really. I basically found a foundry, took pictures, put it on the web, called it a bronze store. We'd
Huh.
get 4 to 5 orders a month. I would, mark up by 4 to 5 times because it was so inexpensive. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was fun to actually have a store I was delivering on, and this was before drop shipping was in vogue, and,
Well, you're saying
yeah, so I've been playing with the
1996 you
internet.
did that.
That's 1990. Oh,
1996 you had an online store. Wow.
1996, what that meant was there were no tools. So that meant I was using Microsoft Word and editing HTML by hand.
Absolutely. I remember how to do that. I remember how to do that. And did you use Dreamweaver? I think that didn't come out until like 99.
At one point in time, I was a Dreamweaver user as well. Yeah. Yeah. How do you not, right? So
That definitely dates us. So now it turns, I mean, you've got this great job, you know, a real seat at Sun Microsystems. You've got a real pension to, and for some reason you decide in 97, just forget it all. You're going to build your own thing. What did you have to believe about yourself before there was any evidence where you could, you know, trust yourself to do something like that? I mean, sounds like you've got this online store in 96 and you go, I can keep going.
yeah. Oh no, it was nothing to do with the store.
Okay.
I think the belief was that I could. I mean, I'm going to give you a quick response. There's the comfort of what happens when you work for somebody else. Means a steady paycheck, steady employment. They become your financial sponsor. For a company like Sun Microsystems, they were also a credibility sponsor. Any event I wanted to speak at, I was an employee of Sun. It was very easy to do. It's just when I was looking at the decisions that were being made by the executive team. I agreed with half and didn't agree with the other half and thought I could do better. And
Okay.
for a long time, I was thinking the path I was going to take was to move up in the corporate world and do other things that way. And in 1997, it was about a year into the dot-com boom. And I kinda thought, well, not only can I do it, if I did it and started my own business, I would immediately jump to be part of the management team of a company where I could then make my own decisions. And so that was the foundation behind I can. And so that's what I did.
So, you know, that whole idea that you were still early in your career. So were you in your 20s or were you in your 30s when you made that decision?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I think late 20s.
You know, we always feel very invincible at that age. We feel like
Indeed.
this might as well be Superman. You see everybody else doing it. And, you know, entrepreneurial ability is, I think all of us step out and believe we can do it. However, you find out, you know, through trial and error that it really takes a lot of work. And then you have these cycles that happen like the dot-com bubble. So you're on your own. And you're in the midst of your new company and just refresh my memory. What did you actually do? What did you actually start, the company when you,
So
walked off?
a e-commerce consulting. companies. So e-commerce clearly is essentially using the internet inside of companies.
Right.
And so almost immediately, I started teaching at San Jose State University. I wrote a book because we all write some book at some point in time. I was already doing a bunch of speaking because it came forward from the Sun Microsystems days. And what
Wonderful.
happened is the world wanted to understand at that stage how the internet was going to be used inside of companies.
Of
So
course.
one of the gifts that came my way was I was teaching at San Jose State in the professional development stage, and I was just running out of time, right? I just had all this other stuff going on, and I'm not a big fan of quitting. So I went into the dean and said, listen, I either have to do more. No, I had no time, but this is how I speak. I either have to do more, I have to do less. It wasn't like I need more money.
Hmm.
It needs to be a bigger, significant part of my life. And
Interesting.
what I was told was, why don't you create a executive business program? And I go, that's interesting. Never thought about that. Hey, give me 3 weeks. I'll come back. Let's get time on the calendar. I'll come back and give you a proposal. So what ended up happening is I started talking to people and I architected what turned out to be a 30 courses in a program. We called it the e-commerce management program. And so I came back into into the dean. And I go, listen, here's what I want to do. At the time, they were paying their outside experts $110 an hour. So I went in and said, listen, I don't want you to pay me anything. So I'll work for free. I want 25% of the door. And what I'll do is I'll pay the faculty members and I'll do all the recruiting. We'll do all the content. I'll train people, blah, blah, blah. And I want to start 9 months from now. I want to start in September. It seemed like September was a good time. The dean was so quick to say yes, other than for legal responsibilities, they wanted to pay and hire the faculty. So
Of
I would
course.
actually bring them in and then they would do the payment directly because no program has ever done well before. So they thought I was just being stupid, but didn't have to pay me $110 an hour. I was going to do something for them. So we ended up selling over 4,700 course seats, and
Wow.
it was a great program. And then from there, I opened up at Comdex. I don't know if you remember, Comdex was the largest IT conference on the planet that happened in
Right.
Vegas once a year. I was
Yes,
asked
I
to
do.
run a track. So I was asked to run a track for Comdex on e-commerce. So I did that for 4 years. And it was it was just a fun time. It just what happened is I let opportunity come my way and I knew enough to listen and to grab it when it came.
You're brilliant in that because it seems like you're riding the wave of what's happening in the market. You're in tune to what's happening in the market. And was there ever a time now during this, you're in late 90s, early 2000s, where you kind of don't have your finger on the pulse? It looks great on the outside, but things are kind of crumbling on the inside.
So what happened when you ride a wave, so riding waves are great, right? Because the market is doing the marketing for you. And if you're out there as the expert, you'll get business. When the wave actually hits and crashes, that's a bad time if you're known for that piece. So when the dot bomb came, all of a sudden that business literally went away. So I was in the high six figures. And one of the things that happened during that time, I call myself a parallel entrepreneur, like not serial, because I like to do multiple things at the same time. Right? Many of us are like that. We just don't give it. Today we say my ADHD came out. I got all these different companies, but I call it parallel entrepreneur. And so one of my students from the San Jose program at some point in time came to me and said, Mitchell, I was trying to create this organization. I couldn't do it. I want you to join me. I'll give you a third of the business. You don't have to do any work. It was called CEO networking. So it was basically pulling together CEOs and C-suite executives into a room as a peer advisory group. So I said, okay. And it turns out I ended up being the chief rainmaker for that business.
Okay. Okay.
And I was only making about 60,000 a year. And so compared
Wow.
to the high six figures of e-commerce, I'm like, yeah, it's about time. So as I literally was just going to do, I got to do more, I got to do less. And the dot
Right.
bomb hit. And
Huh.
so that high six figure business went to zero. And then 60,000 a year looked really good.
My
So,
goodness. My
and
goodness.
so then it's like, what's next? Right. And so that's always been
Right.
for me. If you're riding a wave, I rode the publishing wave at some point in time. When you're riding a wave and it comes to an end, at some point in time, you've got to recognize that it's time to either ride another wave or do something else.
Do you think you think it's really been instinctive, or do you think it's just because you're literally in the business of business? So you're serving businesses. And I think that instinct is coming to you because you're seeing what's happening, and you're in tune to it because you're in the middle of serving CEOs, you've got the networking group going, you've got this e-commerce thing going. And so kind of when the dot-com happened, it's not really instinct, it's just because you've got your ear to the ground. Do you think that's it? Or do you think that people really need to have the instinct? Like right now, we're dealing with one of the most important things that is happening is the financial. I decided this afternoon to start paying attention to what's going on with this Genius bill and the stable coins and all of this. So, I'm in finance. I've got to pay attention to money. I've got to pay attention to what's going on. What do you find is common amongst business owners? Do you think? Because we know that some people don't have their ear to the ground, like what happened between Netflix and Blockbuster, where Blockbuster just did not pay attention. They didn't get on board. Everything's going video. They didn't pay attention. And this little old company, Netflix, just kicks Blockbuster to the curb. And actually, there's a great story behind that. I don't remember all the details, but I just remember it was crazy. And Netflix came out on top, and little multi-million dollar company Blockbuster is all of a sudden poof. So what do you have to do with all of this that you've learned being in the middle of everything? What separates someone who pays attention and rides the next wave for someone who doesn't?
There are like 3 or 4 questions in there. Let me answer at least 2
I
of them.
know.
Thank you. So, I think your first question, is it instinct or is it your ear to the ground? It's both, right? You need to understand the stakeholders in your community. You need to understand your customers. It's important to understand yourself, your family, yourself, like what's happening in your personal life. You need to understand the customers, your prospects. You need to understand the partners that you play with and the community overall. And you should be talking to and listening to all of them. Now, in terms of merging that together, that goes back to the concept of looking at chaos and coming up with potential solutions, right? So that was one answer to your question. It's a little bit of both. If you don't, if your informational diet is only one source, you're not going to get enough information. So you have to get data from all different places. This is true, and unfortunately, one of the
Absolutely.
big problems with education today is we're taught to learn from one TV station, or one newspaper, and the answer is no. You have to be discerning, but we're going to put that aside. Okay. The second piece is one of the gifts that I downloaded at the time I was doing the research, the credibility research. And the gift is the simplicity of what the word clarity means. And
Okay.
so I want to share that with you because I'm going to give you my definition. Clarity is anyone's ability to articulate in 3 to 9 words where they are executing on their purpose.
Interesting.
Okay. So I'll say it again in 3 to 9 words where you're executing on your purpose. Matter of fact, right after this call, you and I have a call with somebody else who's a clarity expert, and I
Okay.
can tell you, 98%. This came out of the research. 98% of companies and humans don't have clarity, right? And if you
Hmm.
don't have clarity, everything else doesn't go so well. I mean, it's not terrible, but it doesn't go so well. So Blockbuster did not have clarity on who they served and what pain point or pleasure point they were serving. They
Hmm.
just had a business model that was generating revenue that they thought would last forever.
Right.
right? And so the fascinating part is I also find clarity experts don't necessarily have clarity either. So based on the definition, 3 to 9 words, where are you executing on your purpose? And what's important about that is part of credibility is being a servant leader, right? If you go through life
Okay.
as a servant leader, who is it that you are serving? And do you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing? That's part of your clarity. And so
Right.
it's very simple. So what I would say to you, and by the way, CPOPs are not sorry, I call it CPOPs, your customer point of possibilities.
Okay.
And they are not static. CPOPs are something that as life changes, as you change, your CPOP will change. Right. But what it does, it becomes, we all need a North Star. Now, for those who are very religious, God is their North Star. And what I'll say is great. I'm glad God is your North Star, but where are you executing on your purpose that God has shared with you? Right. Once again, that's where the CPOP comes back. And so the CPOP becomes the North Star. And when you have a North Star, every decision becomes really simple. Every way you communicate, whether it's what we're doing right now, asynchronously or synchronously, so all your websites, all your social media, everything becomes very simple if you put on the hat of, hey, given these 3 to 9 words, am I effectively communicating who I am and what I do?
That's smart. I love that. CPOP, new term here. And so you pulled three lessons out of all of that collapse and all of your transition. And it's that you are not your job. Don't keep your eggs in one basket and don't take it personally. Right? So,
Thank you. I think you and I had that in our pre-call, and I'm like, yeah, I should have said that. Thank you for reminding me that I said those things. Well done.
that's fine. That's fine. So, with that, those three lessons, when you say don't take it personally, what do you mean by that?
Oh, this is great. Thank you for the reminder. In riding the wave, we'll go back to the dot-com wave. In riding the wave, it's great while the wave is moving forward and then it just stopped. It did not stop because of anything I did. There was nothing I could have done to allow the world to not have a backlash against the internet and technology. And so what I have to recognize, it's not me. Right. So here's the biggest problem most of us have, because this is how we're taught in school, is they make a decision that who they are is their job. And the point is, who you are is not the job you have. Who you are is based on your CPUP, right? And you just happen to have a job to do that. So if the job goes away, you're not a different person. You just now need to find a different financial sponsor. Does that make sense?
It sure does. It sure does. So, over your career, you've established over 20 companies. Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. And
Sorry.
how did
So that was the
you,
question. Was
I
a
mean,
question
that's
or just
all of
a,
your, yeah, yeah. So, well, you've established 20 companies. Tell us, I mean, these are all these parallel companies and not keeping all your eggs in one basket, but you've got these different companies where there's all acquisitions or were they startups? How did that
mm,
work out?
no, great question. Most were just pure startups. So for me, today, let's say you and I, like, we really hit it off and we really go, you know what, we should do something together, right? Many times you have a conversation with somebody and people say that. Well, to me, the best way to start is let's find our first client. So we find our first client. We look each other in the eyes, we shake hands, we'll split profit 50-50, and then we'll serve our first client. At the end of that, we'll say to each other, did we like it? Was it fun? Do we want to do it again? If the answer is yes, yes, and yes, then we draw up the contracts and do whatever we stuff, and then we create a business,
Absolutely.
right? And so largely, I love doing things together with somebody else, right? So what would happen is, I think 4 of those are different publishing imprints, right? So we created a broader umbrella of a publishing company. I have essentially published over 750 books. The book behind me, Executive Abundance, is my
750
16th.
books.
Well, not me, as a publishing company.
750 books you've written?
No, no, no,
Wait
no.
a minute, and this is
No, no.
before AI?
No, 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 no. Not written as a
Okay,
publishing company.
as a publishing company.
As a
Okay,
publishing
I
company,
was
we have
like, "What?"
published over
Okay.
750 books. Now, what I will say though is the book behind me, Executive Abundance, is my 68th book that I've written.
My goodness,
So
that's
the answer is
phenomenal.
big, but not 750. 750 is, and that's the other thing. When you're publishing other authors' content, you're learning about the content. You're learning about an author. You're learning about the trends. You're learning about what their excitement level is. And I primarily would publish the type of authors who are using the book for their business. So it allowed me to keep
Right.
a good pulse on what was happening in their world.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So that's one of the companies that you established. And all of your companies were pretty much always interconnected with that executive abundance mindset in serving the entrepreneurial community, or are you serving the corporate community as well? So is it just
So now
it's
I'm
executive
merging.
CEOs?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been one of those really strange people who have done both the family-owned businesses, the actually 3 things, the family-owned businesses, the small 1 to 10 person businesses, and corporations. And I originally so I just got my PhD. What I studied in my PhD was the short-termism that's pervasive in society today, that's brought about because of quarterly financials. And so I've come up with a framework that gives
Interesting.
permission to the CEO and to the board to do something more than worry about what's happening with next quarter's financials. Like, these people, you work and manage with these people, and they're hitting it out of the park financially, but they're not happy. Well, they're not happy because there are other stakeholder groups in their ecosystem they've completely ignored. They've only focused on the investor part of it. So that's the dissertation I just did, and essentially, what I'll say, it's probably the culmination of my life's work into a framework that I'm now graduated less than a month ago. So, like, if we had this call 2 years ago, it'd be a different Mitchell than the one you see today. All right.
Absolutely.
And so I'm enjoying, I'm actually literally, you asked me how the last 2 weeks have gone since our pre call.
Yes.
I said transformational because starting on, so June 5th, I actually graduated. That's a Friday. And June 8th,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so June 8th, I go, okay, what's next? Right. And not what's next. What's the next big project? What's next is who am I going to talk to? So I'm basically let the universe come my way. If you're religious, it's God winks. If you're spiritual, it's the universe come your way. Who am I going to talk to that's going to open up the right doors for me? And
Mm,
where am I going to be steered? Right. So it's just
right.
what I've always done, talk to people and get grounding. And what surprised me in terms of opportunities that have come my way is I was originally thinking that executive abundance was absolutely for the corporate world. And if you
Okay.
look at the 10 examples of companies, I used WD-40, Amazon, Best Buy, right? Companies that had at some time in their lifestyle actually delivered on the concept of executive abundance.
Right. Mhm.
And what I got over the last couple of weeks is, you know, shouldn't I be focusing on family businesses and owner operated businesses because they don't have the same governance that the larger companies have?
Right.
And you would think a family owned business would care about family and would care about their employees
Y
and their customers and their community. And all of a
maybe.
sudden, as I start thinking about and talking to some thought leaders in that space, they're like, yeah, I've been thinking about that too. And I need a framework. And your
Huh.
framework might be the right one. Let's play together. So I'm at the
Right.
stage of who is or what is that next company or set of companies that I create because I find somebody that I really enjoy. I like to say the word playing with, but
Mhm.
play to me, work equals play because I've always enjoyed what I do. So I'm looking for the types of people where there's something interesting, we could do it together, and all of a sudden we start changing lives and changing companies and changing the world. And now I have this foundation, but I don't need I think what happens with age, it's less about ego. I just
Right.
want people to live an abundant life. I want people to be happier. Abundance to me, and executive abundance means that we bring abundance to the bigger ecosystem. And that
Right.
bigger ecosystem starts with can I just give you the 5 components of the executive abundance?
Absolutely. Please do. Please do.
All right. So for the video, I'm gonna share this, and for those who are audio, I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
Executive abundance is a very simple, I call it the 4x5. On the concept of the engine, the most
Hmm.
important thing we need is clarity. We've talked about clarity before.
Yes.
And if 98% of humans and companies don't have clarity, the rest of the engine becomes harder. What comes next
Absolutely.
is credibility. And then here's what's
Mm.
interesting. For 5.5 years, I would talk about clarity and credibility, but I did not talk about consistency and commitment because I just assumed
Okay.
that if you have clarity and you are credible, that you're going to do it consistently and you're going to do it in times of scarcity and success. And I realized in doing my doctorate program that that was something that I actually need to explicitly mention. So essentially,
Right.
the engine are 4 C's: clarity, credibility, consistency, and commitment. Now, the
Got it.
ecosystem is where it becomes interesting. The most
Mm.
important, and these are what those, for those who are seeing it, these are ordered and interdependent. The most important thing is your family and yourself. Because in the
Right.
30% of the time when you're not working, if things are really sucky, to use a technical word, at home, you're going to bring that into the office. As a leader, it's going to be much harder. So we need to take care of ourselves, our health, our family. And then what comes next are the employees. Now we
Right.
say we care about employees. Those are
Hmm.
words we say. Companies say we care about our employees. If that was true, the employee engagement scores would not be at the 20% range, right? So
Right.
we need to not only empower our employees, we need to respect our employees. And most
Hmm.
companies don't respect the employee base. That's why engagement's
Right.
so low. If we
Right.
do
It's
take care
very
of our
difficult.
employees though,
Yeah, very difficult. This is a thing. This is a challenge right now in finding a way to keep the employees at a particular place. It's we don't have a dedication anymore with the new employees that are out
I'm
there.
not actually present it in a different way because what you're presenting
Hmm.
is it's the responsibility of the company to do the right thing, and it is, but it's not to keep them in place. It's the responsibility of the company to create an environment that the
Okay,
employees want to be there,
that's right.
right? Not just because they're
Got it.
making money, but because it's fun and it's part of their soul and it's part of their mission and they're doing the right thing. And so
Hmm.
potentially the employees are also serving the ecosystem and getting rewarded for it. Because what's interesting is the
Right.
next stakeholder group are customers. If you take care of the employees, they'll take care of the customers. And I was taught that in B school. But when I went
Right.
to the real world, and particularly I'm thinking about Sun Microsystems and all the companies I've worked with afterwards, if we truly cared about customers, why would we pay the customer service reps the lowest amount of money in the company? Right?
Interesting.
I'll be
Mm,
really clear. If you say you care about your customers and on the HR side, you're paying them the least amount of money, I will tell you, you do not care about your customers, right? So if you do
right.
take care of your customers,
Right.
they'll take care of the investors. And what I want to mention today
And not to
is
mention,
I
and most of the time they're overseas, and most of the time they're overseas. So you're really
right,
not caring
right.
about your customers. And then you can't even understand them. That's the most frustrating part. You're absolutely right on that.
Well, because what we've been doing is we've been treating employees as headcount. And what we've been doing since the 80s and 90s is we've been optimizing employee productivity. And
Right.
so that is when I was doing my dissertation, what I was looking for was the father of short termism.
Mm,
And I thought that the father of short termism was Edward Deming.
Okay.
Edward Deming is the guy who went over to Japan after World War II and helped all the manufacturing companies start doing great work. He had a philosophy that that essentially leadership education truncated in the 80s and
Mm-hmm.
90s. So here's what we know of his philosophy. Let's do time and motion studies and optimize the employee experience. Okay, we stop there. Now, I'll
Right.
tell you about the rest of his theory. If we do that, we'll create a better working environment for the employee. We'll create better product, which will allow the customer to be happier. But that's not what
Okay.
we talk about. What we talk about is optimizing employee productivity. Well,
Mm-hmm.
with AI and robotics, if we continue down the path of optimizing employee productivity, the most optimal form of company is very few to zero employees.
Got it.
So if we end up going that direction, then what happens to our economy, which is based on consumerism? Where is the money coming from? Because
Mm,
we don't like this concept called universal basic income because we don't want to be a socialist country. So what is, and this is a problem around the world, right? Anyway,
absolutely.
we'll put that aside. So
Mm,
you'll notice on the framework that investors were fourth, not first. And after that, we do the last stakeholder group is the community, both your
got
virtual
it.
and physical community. And so what's interesting, we are as a company, if you think about company as an entity, we are based on what we measure. Yeah, I'll do that again. So we are as a company based on what we measure. So if only the only thing we measure is how are we doing quarter over quarter, and that's the only thing we care.
Are you hearing that? Does it cut you off?
I am definitely
Someone
hearing that. I can either keep
it's so
talking
it's
if
so
you want,
funny.
or
No, it's so funny because when it's my WhatsApp and I there's no way for me to stop it from doing that. So because I've cut my phone off, but then it rings on my computer.
oh,
So
you know what I by the way, I agree with you. And one of the things I learned is if that's going to happen during the meetings, just close the tab, open it up later.
close the tab and open it up again.
Yeah. Oh no, close the tab and then open up at the end of the interview. Yeah, the only way I found to force WhatsApp not to ring is to actually
Uh-huh.
close the tab on the computer, then it doesn't ring anymore.
No, so I keep stopping it, but he's calling back over and over. So I hope he would get a clue and stop calling. So let me just tell him I will call you back. Thank God this is pre-recorded.
Well
Yeah.
even
So
if it wasn't, isn't
yeah.
isn't the fact that this happens part of real life and authentically us, right? So,
Right, it is, right? Yeah, absolutely. But okay, so you were talking about the stakeholders you left off where investors are fourth and community is basically fifth and
right.
not first. Okay. So
And so
go ahead.
okay. Well, what I was in terms of tying it all together, if we only measure the investor's quarterly return, then what we're doing is we're demonstrating to all their employees that we don't care about anything but return. We don't
Of
care
course.
about the employees. We don't care about the customers. We don't care about the community. And so what happens if companies end up putting on their measurement the types of KPIs that say, well, let's make sure everyone's happy. Let's make sure
Right.
your home life is working. Let's make sure that you're engaged at work. If you're not engaged at work, what could you do to be engaged? Let's make sure if you're here because you like serving the customers that we serve, why don't we make sure you do it in a way that you're happy? Right. And
Right.
it means transforming from the board and CEO level down the
Right.
messages that we're giving, not just externally, but also
Mhm.
internally. And that's
Mhm.
not what we've just gone down this path of more money, quarter over quarter, more money. Let's make more money. And we just assume if we pay the employees more money, they're going to be happier. That's not working anymore. That model
Right.
is going down a path that we don't like.
Well, actually, yeah, I read a study where is it Gen Z, I guess, that just entered the workforce, and these people, will leave a PhD and a hospital, where they just earned their PhD, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that, or their parents did, to go work at Starbucks because it's happier for them. Have you seen that study? A
So
lot
so
of
the
them are
answer is
doing that. Like they'll just go
exactly.
and
So
do
how do
something
we
that
accommodate
makes
that
them feel
world?
happy. Yeah.
How do we accommodate that world? How do we create an environment in an organization where we have human capital, human resources that are fulfilling their life's purpose and the company's purpose at the same time? We
Right.
don't think that way. We don't talk that way because our measurement system is very myopic. And a
Right.
measurement system today is simply, are we making money next quarter? And
Right.
I will argue with you that that's if we continue down that path, that's a path that ultimately ends in a negative way.
So what's the mistake? I mean, people make chasing the result, chasing the exit, chasing the raise, without doing the internal work the result actually requires. What's the mistake people make in doing that? How can they fix it?
Well, you're asking a question on an individual level or on a corporate level?
Corporate,
Okay,
because corporates are run definitely by, CEOs who have to make those decisions.
fantastic. Well, thank you. So the first statement I would make is one that most people listening to this will go, "Yeah, that's not true. That's not me." And I'm going to say is every corporation needs clarity. Now, I did
Right.
feature 10 in the book that at a point in time had clarity because that's what the CEO brought in. And I'll go
Okay.
back to the definition of clarity. In 3 to 9 words, where are you executing on your purpose?
Got
And
it.
most companies and corporations will say, oh, well, we have multiple ways we're doing it. That's not clarity, right?
Mm,
If you update your North Star, then look at each one of your systems that you have in place and say, is this adding value to the North Star or not? A annual performance review does not add value to anyone's North Star. They should be
right.
thrown away and something else put in place. What's that something else? Well, if we start putting KPIs in place that deal with a much bigger ecosystem, then those KPIs adjust and update themselves on a daily basis. That doesn't mean you reward back or forth on a daily basis. But if you're at work, let's say you're a barista at Starbucks, you know if you had a good day because you brought smiles to people's
Mm,
eyes. Well, how does an
right.
employee know they had a good day? Once again, if they're only measured
Mm,
on, hey, we made money this quarter, so you get a bonus, it's not the same thing.
of
So it
course.
literally starts at the top. Have clarity, act in a credible way, do it consistently, and have a commitment to do it in good times and bad. And that's the executive abundance engine. If you're asking me how to do it, start with clarity. If 98% of companies and humans don't have clarity, let's start with clarity.
Wow. Now let's talk about AI. You told me you're not personally threatened by AI. A lot of people are these days. What's the difference between those two things for you? Where AI, you said humans, you said in our last call, our little pre call, you said you're not threatened by AI, but we as humans should absolutely be. What's the difference between those two things for you?
Oh, that's a great question. For me personally, I've always enjoyed seeing what's coming down the line and determining ways to use it effectively. Right. So the internet, at Sun Microsystems, we were using the internet way before companies even knew who to spell the word. Right now, not as early as when DARPA deployed the internet, but much earlier than the internet became a commercial
When
vehicle.
did Oh, you said something very interesting. When did DARPA actually deploy the internet? I don't know the answer to that one.
I knew that answer off the top of my head, but I will use AI to tell me that answer in a minute. So uh, let me ask that question.
And you just said something that's been a big secret thing. Some people don't even know who DARPA is. They seem to test all the technology before anyone else does. They're probably the ones that are doing all the reverse engineering that they were talking about in Congress with the alien ships and all that.
So 1958, DARPA is the Advanced Research Projects Agency. In 1966 is when some of the core technology came into place. And it was October 29th, 1969, that the first message was sent from UCLA to Stanford Research Institute over what is now called
Interesting.
the internet.
Well, you know what? That's probably limited information because DARPA is a governmental agency, and so if it was tested in the universities, that's when they first decided to give it to the universities. So that means it must date before that. That's not public information.
So no, well, if you search on it, it actually says the short answer: DARPA didn't deploy the internet as we know it today. It was funded and developed. The precursor was what was called ARPANET. But anyhow, here's the cool part.
ARPANET.
You asked me a great question, and I'll tell you my answer, right? So let me break my answer down. Part of being credible is being vulnerable. So at some point in time, I knew
Right.
that answer off the top of my head, but hadn't used it in so long, I forgot it. And instead of
Okay.
trying to guess, I was vulnerable and said, I don't know, but let me look it up. Why do I like AI? Because I could look up stuff like that, right? It's
Right.
any question I have, I could ask the question. Now, a great question.
Right.
I told you after this interview, I'm meeting with somebody who is a clarity expert and has been very successful. So my conversation,
Okay.
first thing I do is I look at their website, I look at their LinkedIn, I look at their social, and then I go to AI.
Right.
I said, "Do you know this person?"
Huh.
And they go, "Yeah, of course I know this person." Okay, how does this person's work relate to my work? And then I get really good cross correlation. You know,
That's wonderful.
I've not seen this person's definition of clarity. How does this person define the word clarity? And then it comes back and says, it starts going out there and research and says, it doesn't actually define clarity anywhere. Right. And so why do I like AI? I could get access to any information that is available publicly at my
Right.
fingertips. And not only do I get access to the information, but I also get access to an analysis of that information. Personally, what's important, what we don't teach in school today is this concept of discernment. Because the first answer coming back, although it's going to be authoritative, the first answer
Right.
coming back is not going to be the right answer. Right. So you need to ask more questions. You need to
That's right.
define what you really mean. And what'll come back is potentially magic. So
Right.
I love the fact that what may have taken me uh, hours, days, sometimes weeks to do happens super. Like, for instance, one of my friends recently said to me, she's been an expert witness for 20 years. She goes,
Uh-huh.
Mitchell, I think you should do the expert witness thing. This is being hired by lawyers in civil cases. And I'm like, I did that once during the dot-com days. That's a good idea. So I
Okay.
asked her what to do, and she told me a roadmap. I then went to AI and said, what should I do? And it's funny, AI gave the same roadmap she gave. So
Wonderful.
a practice professional told me what to do. AI gave me the same thing. So validation. But now I go, well, what's next? And it walked
Right.
me through all the things I need to create. And when I then created my expert witness CV and my expert witness webpage, what's wrong with this? If I was a defense attorney going against Mitchell Levy as an expert witness, where are the holes in this
Oh,
webpage? Right?
wow.
Those are things that come over time, and over time might be months, quarters, years, not
Right.
days or weeks.
Right.
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 And so that's why I like AI, because you now have the ability to ask questions and do things and have a lot of experts in your pocket. Here's what I don't like about AI.
Okay.
Given how we've been taught at school, we've been taught essentially to be robots or cogs in a wheel of a company. Some people would say we've been taught to be sheep.
Right.
And so what happens is we ask AI a question, it gives us an answer, and they go, yep, that's the answer. Right. And AI is going to give you the answer to some extent what you want to hear. So you have to be discerning and say, yeah, I know what you just said, but it doesn't make sense to me. Can you redo it?
Right.
The other day, I asked a question. I was being booked on a podcast in Australia, and the person in Australia used Australia time zone calendars. I couldn't turn it. The tool they were using was not sophisticated enough. And so I asked AI, listen, if it's this time in Brisbane, what's the time and it's like 15, 16 hours difference. AI actually gave me an answer and it got the days of the week wrong. And so I looked at the calendar, I looked at its answer, and I go, you made a mistake on the days of the week. And it goes, yep, I did. I'm sorry. Here's the proper days. Right. And so the point is we need to be discerning. What I don't like about AI is the people who would accept the answer. Now, days of the week, that's pretty obvious. It's very easy to see that it says that the 25th is a Monday and the 25th is actually a Tuesday. Like that's a very obvious one,
Right.
right? That's black
Right.
or white. But many of the answers that come in are not black or white. And then we make decisions based on those answers. And then what companies are doing is using AI robotics and AI inside robotics to replace humans because they're going after the goal of making more money, not after a goal of making sure the ecosystem is doing better. And so
That makes
the
sense.
biggest problem I have with AI at the moment is it's moving in the direction of one or two different sci-fi movies. Right? So it's moving in the direction of Terminator,
It sure is.
right? Or it's moving in the direction of
Yes.
Soylent Green, right? And the question
Or The
is,
Matrix. I can't believe you said only Terminator or this
oh, you're
Terminator
right.
or The Matrix.
I didn't say the Matrix. We could be living in a Matrix, or we could be. You're right.
Yes.
I'll have to bundle that in. Thank you for that.
No, I'm telling no, it's odd too. But Terminator and The Matrix were written by the same person. Terminator is actually the prelude to The Matrix. So
I did not know that.
I
Wow.
didn't either. It recently came out because apparently the writer hasn't been given her due credit or money, and she sent her trilogy in to actually no, she wrote two books, The Terminator and The Matrix One, and Matrix One and Terminator One in the early 80s. And so she's been suing the companies. And that's when we found out she's been interviewing. So we've been finding out that she wrote Terminator and Matrix, and Terminator is the prelude to the Matrix.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it? And
That's
then when you
actually
think about what we're going through right now.
now I could see that. Yep. And Soylent Green,
Yeah.
by the way, was a world where we didn't have enough resources. So there was a handful of
Right.
elite that had resources and everyone else didn't. And because there were no
Oh,
resources, right? It's not worth going into. The problem is we need to change the way we are being humane. We need to
right.
change the way humans are actually operating and functioning. And what the educational system, the structures we have in place, the business systems have worked. And we really took what was the Industrial Revolution and brought it to a phenomenal place. And now we're
Right.
at another tipping point. And the tipping point says, well, do we go down the path and there's all these lots of things, is it global warming? Is it we lose power? Is it we pollute the cities? I mean, there's so many different things, but how do we actually create a world which is nicer, happier,
Course.
or as John Lennon would say, is full of love?
And executive abundance is partly about using technology to add value back to the people you serve. So that is absolutely phenomenal. So what part of your work will you never hand to AI?
There's nothing better than looking somebody in the eye, whether they're the CEO of a large company or a CEO of a very small practice, and helping them to get clarity and to see that. Now, let me say, I've also created a chat bot that will do this for you. So I did give this to AI. That
Okay.
said, there is nothing more, well, because the gift I got in the download of the CPOP and subsequently the executive abundance needs to be shared. And for those who can do it themselves, I want you to take it and use it. For those who
Nice.
want help and support, there are many people who feel and work the same way I do. And that's where my goal is, to find those people who are ready and get them moving along. But you asked me
Right.
the question, where would I never? The answer is I'm not sure there's any place I would never, other than I I've never actually worked a day in my life because I've always loved what I do. And so
Absolutely.
what I love doing, even though I have given this to AI, is to sit with a human and help them see in 3 to 9 words where they're executing on their purpose. Because for most people, they've never actually done that before, and they're just astonished. I mean, absolutely
Mm,
astonished on how it could be so simple. And the
mm.
downside, unfortunately, is that 90% of them will let that fall away. And I think that's where maybe an AI agent can help them stay attuned to this, to their CPOP.
Yep.
Thank you. Actually, you've given me some ideas of potentially what's next with the AI I've already created. So thank you for asking
Awesome.
that question.
So,
I would say feel free to ask AI about the CPOP, or go to the AI, the CPOP architect. Or if you ended up going to mitchellevy.com and were able to get time on my calendar this week, let's get your CPOP. Let's help you
got it.
articulate where you're executing on your purpose. Now, once you understand that, then the next question is this where you want to be? Right? So
Mm,
if it's an executive who is only there for the money, you may have a CPOP that doesn't resonate in the soul. And then the next question is, well, where should we put you? Or should we change what the company does? Right. But I think the most important thing is identify your North Star. And your North Star, I will give you the answer to what is the CPOP. It's a formula, and the
okay.
formula is very, very simple. The first part of the formula is, who do you serve? 1, 2, or 3 words. Who is the audience that you serve? And then the second part of the formula is, from their perspective, what is their pain point or what is their pleasure point? And there is not a company or a human that can't articulate their CPOP in 3 to 9 words. And so pick up the book, Executive Abundance. It'll give you the CPOPs of the 10 companies and examples. It'll give you the formula and how to do it, and then how to actually go ahead and deploy it. But if you want one thing today, think about the who and the what, and then start talking
Mm,
to people about it. Now, you're going to get a lot of pushback because most people say it can't be that simple.
mm.
But if you're part of the 10% that all of a sudden you hear your CPOP and you go, oh my God, I've got a North Star, my life will change. If you're part of that 10%, you're going to now see the world in such a different light that it's impossible for you. One of my goals every day is to change the life of one human for the rest of their life. If you're part of that
Wonderful.
10%, I've changed your life for the rest of your life. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
So feel
Wonderful.
free.
Wonderful.
Yeah. For that one, feel free to reach out, or, we'll make sure in the notes we have the access to that, or we'll make sure we put in the CPOP architect so people can get access to them. It's never too late to add value to the audience you were meant to be serve on this planet.
So,
Actually, it's
so
really funny. It really fun. It is. If you look at history, it, every generation has
every
changed.
18 going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
But you
so
and I have
if
some overlap here, and what we could say is the difference between pre-electricity and electricity, the difference between in hot climates, pre-air conditioning, post-air conditioning, the difference between pre-internet and internet, and now the difference between
AI,
AI and robotics that really does take over or could take over people's jobs, and what we become. So we have a choice. What will we become? And
right.
will we work alongside, or will we produce an environment where something negative happens? So I would love that. It's a great step. So that was the roadmap. Executive abundance is the roadmap. It's not the only answer of what's next, but it is an answer. And so, like I said, go to my website, mitchelllevy.com. It'll point you to the right places. That's mitchellevy.com. And ultimately, if you decide you want to book time on my calendar, you can get there. You can get on my calendar as well. So thank
Wonderful
you.
to
Thanks today.